Lord Chaitanya next described the Leela avatars or pastime incarnations, and of these the Lord pointed out that there is no limit. Still, he described some of them, for example, Matsya, Kurma, Raghunath, Narsimha, Vaman, and Varaha. As far as Gunavatars or qualitative incarnations of Vishnu are concerned, there are three: Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma is one of the living entities, but due to his devotional service, he is very powerful. This primal, this primal living entity, master of mode of material passion, is directly empowered by Garbhodakshai Vishnu to create innumerable living organisms. In the Brahma Samhita 5.49, Brahma is likened to a valuable jewel influenced by the rays of the sun and the Supreme Lord. Garbhodakshai Vishnu is likened to the sun. If in some kalpa there is no suitable living entity who can act in Brahma's capacity, Garbhodakshai Vishnu Garbhodakshai Vishnu himself becomes Brahma and acts accordingly. Similarly, by expanding himself as Lord Shiva, the Supreme Lord is engaged when there is a need to annihilate the universe. Lord Shiva, in association with Maya, has many forms, which are generally numbered at 11. Lord Shiva is not one of the living entities, he is more or less Krishna himself. The example of milk and yogurt is often given in this regard. Yogurt is a preparation of milk, but still yogurt cannot be used as milk. Similarly, Lord Shiva is an expansion of Krishna, but he cannot act like Krishna, nor can we derive the spiritual restoration from Lord Shiva that we derive from Krishna. The essential difference is that Lord Shiva has a connection with material nature, but Vishnu or Lord Krishna has nothing to do with material nature. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10.88.3, it is stated that Lord Shiva is a combination of the three kinds of transformed consciousness known as uh, Vaikarika, Tejasa, and Tamasa.
The Vishnu incarnation, although masters of the modes of goodness within each universe, is in no way in touch with the influence of material nature. Although Vishnu is equal to Krishna, Krishna is the original source. Vishnu is a part, but Krishna is the whole. This is the verdict of the Vedic literature. The Brahma Samhita 5.46 gives the example of an original candle which lights a second candle. Although the candles are of equal power, one is still accepted as the original and the other is said to be kindled from the original. The Vishnu expansion is like the second candle. He is as powerful as Krishna, but the original Vishnu is Krishna. Brahma and Lord Shiva are obedient servants of the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord as Vishnu is an expansion of Krishna. After describing the Leela and the Guna avatars to Sanatan Goswami, Lord Chaitanya explained the Manvantara avatars incarnation associated with the Manus. He first stated that there is no possibility of counting the Manvantara avatars. 14 Manus appear in one Kalp or day of Brahma, and for each Manu there is a Manvantara avatar. It is calculated that each day of Brahma lasts 43 crore 20 lakh Earth years, and Brahma lives for 100 years on the scale. Thus, if 14 Manus appear in one day of Brahma, there are 420 Manus during 1 month of Brahma, and during 1 year of Brahma, there are 5040 Manus. Since Brahma lives for 100 for his of his years, it is calculated that there are 5,04,000 Manus manifested during the lifetime of one Brahma. Since there are innumerable universes, no one can imagine the totality of the Manvantara incarnation. Countless universes are produced by the exhalation of Mahavishnu, and thus no one can begin to calculate how many Manus are existing at one time.
Each Manu is known by a different name. The first Manu is Swayambhu, and he is a direct son of Brahma. The second Manu is Swaroshasha, is the son of predominating deity of fire. The third Manu is Uttama, and he is the son of King Priyavrat. The fourth Manu, Tamas, is the brother of Uttama and is the fifth Manu, Ravat, as is the fifth Manu, Ravat. The sixth Manu, Chakshusha. Chakshush is the son of Chakshus. The seventh Manu is Vavasvat and he is the son of sun god. The eighth Manu is Savarni and he is also the son of sun god, born of a wife named Chaya. The tenth Manu, Daksha Savarni, is the son of Varun. The tenth Manu, ninth Manu, Daksha Savarni. The tenth Manu, Brahma Savarni, is the son of Upashlok. The other four Manus are Rudra Savarni, Dharma Savarni, Deva Savarni, and Indra Savarni. After describing the Manu incarnations, Lord Chaitanya described the Yuga avatars to Sanatana Goswami. There are four Yugas or millenniums: Satya, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali. And in each millennium, the Supreme Lord appears in an incarnation of a different color. In Satyuga, the color of the principal incarnation is white. In the Treta Yuga, the color is red. In Dwapar Yuga, blackish, and in the Kali Yuga, yellow. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam by the astrologer Gargamuni, who calculated Krishna's horoscope in the house of Nanda Maharaj. In the Satyuga, the process of self-realization was meditation, and this process was taught by the white incarnation of the god. This incarnation gave a benediction to sage Kardam, by which he obtained an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his son. In the Satyuga, everyone meditated on Krishna, and each and every living entity was in full knowledge. In the present age, the Kali Yuga, people are not in full knowledge and still attempting various meditative processes not recommended for this age.
In the Treta millennium, the process for self realization was the performance of various sacrifices, and this process was taught by the red incarnation of God. In the Dwapar millennium, Krishna was personally present, and the process of self realization for everyone in that age was worshipping him. He was blackish in color, he was the incarnation of Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, and he induced people to worship him as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.29 states that in the Dwapar millennium, people generally worship the Supreme Lord Krishna by chanting the following hymn: Let me offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead in form of Vasudev, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Anirudh. In the next millennium, the present age, Kali Yuga, the Lord is yellow, and he teaches people the process of attaining love of God by chanting the names of Krishna. This process is shown personally by Krishna in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he exhibits love of Godhead by chanting, singing, and dancing with thousands of people following him. This particular incarnation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is foretold in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the age of Kali, the Lord incarnates as a devotee and is always chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Although he is Krishna, his complexion is not blackish like Krishna's in Dwapar Yuga, but is golden. He always engages in preaching love of Godhead through the Sankirtana movement, and those who are intelligent adopt this process of self realization. Srimad Bhagavatam 12.3.52. The self realization achieved in the Satya millennium by meditation, in the Treta millennium by performance of different sacrifices, and in the Dwapar millennium by worship of Lord Krishna can be achieved in age of Kali simply by chanting the holy name Hare Krishna. This is confirmed in Vishnu Puran 6.2.17. In this age, there is no use in meditation, performance of sacrifices, or temple worship. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, one can achieve perfect self realization. When Lord Chaitanya described the incarnation for this age of Kali, Sanatan Goswami, who had been a government minister and was perfectly capable of drawing conclusions, asked the Lord, how can one understand the advent of incarnation of an incarnation. From the description of the incarnation for the Kali millennium, Sanatan Goswami could understand that Lord Chaitanya himself was the incarnation of Krishna, and he could also understand in the future many people would try to imitate Lord Chaitanya because the Lord had played as an ordinary Brahmana, though his devotees accepted him as an incarnation. Since Sanatan knew that there would be many pretenders, he asked the Lord, how can one understand the symptoms of an incarnation?
As one can understand the different incarnation for previous millenniums by referring to the Vedic literature, the Lord replied, one can similarly understand who is actually the incarnation of Godhead in the age of Kali. In this way, the Lord especially stressed reference to authoritative scriptures. In other words, one should not whimsically accept a person as an incarnation but should try to understand the characteristics of an incarnation by referring to scriptures. An incarnation of the Supreme Lord never declares himself to be an incarnation, but it follows must ascertain who is an incarnation and who is a pretender by referring to authoritative scriptures. Any intelligent person can understand the characteristics of a real incarnation by understanding two kinds of feature. The principal features called personal characteristics and the marginal features comprising his activities. The scripture describe both kind of features. For example, in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1, the features of an incarnation are nicely described. In that verse, the two terms Param, Supreme, and the Satyam, truth, are used. And the Lord Chaitanya indicated that these words reveal Krishna's principal feature. The other marginal feature are that he taught Vedic knowledge to Brahma and incarnated as the Purush Avatar to create the cosmic manifestation. These are occasional feature manifested for some special purposes. One should be able to understand and distinguish the principal and marginal features of an avatar. No one can declare himself an incarnation without referring of these two features. An intelligent man will not accept anyone as an avatara without studying the principal and marginal features. When Sanatana Goswami tried to confirm Lord Chaitanya's personal characteristics as being those of the incarnation for as uh, personal as being those of the incarnation for this age, Lord Chaitanya himself indirectly confirms Sanatanans conclude by simply saying, let us have aside all this discussion and continue with a description of a Sakyesa avatars. The Lord then pointed out that there is no limit of the Satyase Avatara, but that some can be mentioned as example. The Satyase the Satyavesa incarnation are of two kinds, direct and indirect. When the Lord himself comes, he is called a Saksat or direct. Saktiya Vesa Avatar, and when he empowered a living entity to represent him, then living entity is called an indirect or Avesha incarnation. Example of indirect avatars are the four Kumaras, Narad, Prithu, and Parasurma. These are actually living entities who are given some specific power by the Supreme Personality of Godhead when a specific opulence of the Supreme Lord is invested in a specific entities. They are called Avesh Avtaras. The four Kumaras represented the Supreme Lord's opulence of knowledge. Narada represent devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Devotional service is also represented by Lord Chaitanya, who is considered the full representation of devotional service. In Brahma, the opulence of creative power is invested. The king Prathu is invested with the power for maintaining the living entities. Similarly, in Parshuram, the power for killing evil element is invested. As for Vibhuti, or the special or the special favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that a living entity who is especially powerful or beautiful should be known to be especially favored by the Supreme Lord. Example of direct or saktas. Nitya Vesha Avtaras are the Shesha incarnation and the Anant incarnation. In the Anant, the power for sustaining all the planets is invested, and this in the Shesha incarnation is invested with the power for serving the Supreme Lord. Mataji, should I continue?
Yes, Mataji.
After describing the Saktivesha incarnation, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to speak about the age of the Supreme Lord. He said that the Supreme Lord Krishna is always like a 16-year-old boy. When he desired a descent to this universe, he first sent his father and mother, who are his devotees, and then he himself appears. All his activities, beginning with the killing of Putna's demon, are displayed in innumerable universes, and there is no limit to them. Indeed, at every moment, at every second, his manifestations and various pastimes are seen in different universes. Brahmandas, Brahmandas. Thus, his activities are just like the waves of Ganga's river. Just as there is no limit to the flowing of the waves of Ganga, there is no cessation of various features of Lord Krishna's pastime in different universes. From childhood, he displays many pastime and ultimately he exhibits the Ras dance.
It is said that the pastimes of Krishna are eternal, and this is confirmed in every scripture. Generally, people cannot understand how Krishna performs his pastimes, but Lord Chaitanya clarified this by comparing the performance of his pastimes to the orbit of the sun. According to Vedic astrological calculations, the 24 hours of a day are divided into 60 dandas. The day are again divided into 300 pulse. The sun disk can be perceived crossing the sky in steps of 60 pulse each, and that time constitutes a dand. 8 dands make one prahar, and the sun rises and sets within 4 prahars. Similarly, 4 prahars constitute one night, and after that, sun rises. And just as the sun can be seen in its movement through 3,600 pulse, all the pastimes of Krishna can be seen in any of the universes. Lord Krishna remains in the universe for only 125 years, but all the pastimes of that period are exhibited in each and every universe. These pastimes include his appearance, the activities of his boyhood and youth, and his later pastimes, including those at Dwarka. Since all these pastimes are present in one or another, or the myriad universes, at any given time, they are called eternal. Just as the sun is eternally existing, although we see it rise and set, appear and disappear according to our position on the earth, so Krishna's pastimes are eternally going on, although we can see them in this particular universe only at certain intervals. As started earlier, Krishna's abode is the supreme planet known as Golok Vrindavan, and by his will, this Golok Vrindavan is manifested in this universe and in other universes as well. Like Krishna's name, fame, and everything else directly connected to him, Golok Vrindavan is absolute and therefore is equal to him. Thus, the Lord is always in his supreme abode, Golok Vrindavan, and by his supreme will, his activities are also manifested at particular places and innumerable universes. And whenever or wherever Krishna appears, he displays his six opulences.
Chapter 9, The Opulences of Krishna. Since Lord Chaitanya is especially merciful to innocent, unsophisticated persons, his name is Patita Pavana, the deliverer of the most fallen conditioned souls. Although a conditioned soul may be fallen to the lowest position, such a lowly state with no with not prevent will not prevent him from advancing in spiritual science, provided he is innocent. Sanatan Goswami was considered fallen in society because he was in service of Muslim government and had thus been excommunicated from Brahminical society, but because he was a sincere soul, Lord Chaitanya showed him special favor by granting him a wealth of spiritual information. The Lord next explained to Sanatan Goswami how the different spiritual planets are situated in the spiritual sky. The spiritual planets are also known as Vaikuntha planets. The planets of the spirit the planets of the material creation have a limited length and breadth, but as far as Vaikuntha planets are concerned, because they're spiritual, there is no limit to their dimensions. Lord Chaitanya informed Sanatan Goswami that the length and breadth of every Vaikuntha planet is thousands of millions of miles. In other words, no one can measure any Vaikuntha planet's actual extent. Each of these planets is unlimitedly expanded, and in each of them, the residents are full in all six opulences: wealth, strength, knowledge, beauty, fame, and renunciation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is present in every Vaikuntha planet. Indeed, in each Vaikuntha planet, an expansion of Krishna has his eternal abode, and Krishna himself has his original eternal abode called Krishna Loka or Goloka Vrindavan. In this universe, even the largest planet lies in the corner of outer space. For example, although the sun is a million times larger than the earth, it still lies in one corner of outer space. Similarly, each of Vaikuntha planets, although unlimited in length and breadth, lies in the corner of spiritual sky known as Brahma Jyoti. In the Brahma Samhita, the Brahma Jyoti is described as Nishkalam, Anantam, Ashesha Bhutam, or undivided and unlimited and without a trace of material modes of nature. All the Vaikuntha planets are like petals of lotus flower, and the principal part of that lotus, the center of all Vaikunthas, is called Krishnalok or Golok Vrindavan.
Thus, the expansions of Krishna in various forms as described herein, as well as his various abodes on the spiritual planets in the spiritual sky, are unlimited. Even demigods like Brahma and Shiva cannot see the Vaikuntha planet or even estimate their number or uh, vast extent. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.21. No one can estimate the length and breadth of all the Vaikuntha planets. Elsewhere in Bhagavatam 2.7.41, it is stated that not only one demigods like Brahma and Shiva are unable to make such an estimate, but even Ananta, the incarnation of Lord's opulence of strength, cannot ascertain any limit of the to the Lord's potential or to the area of the different Vaikuntha planet. Again, Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.21, one of the prayers of Brahma, it is very convincing in this connection. O my dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, O Super Soul, O Master of all mystic powers, no one can know or explain the extent of your Vaikuntha planet or how you expand your Yogamaya energy through the three worlds. And a few verses earlier, Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.7, Brahma says, scientists and learned men cannot even measure the atomic constitution of a single planet. Even if they could count the molecules of snow in the sky or the number of stars in space, they could not understand how you descend to this earth or in this universe with your innumerable transcendental potentials and qualities. In Srimad Bhagavatam 2.7.41, Lord Brahma informs Narad that none of the great sages born before Narad, including Brahma himself, can measure the extent of the Supreme Lord potentials. Indeed, Brahma declared that even Ananta, with his thousands of tongues, falls when he tried to fully describe the Lord's energy. Similarly, in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.87.41, the personified Vedas pray. My Lord, you are unlimited, and therefore no one can measure the extent of your potentials. I think that even you do not know the range of your energies. An unlimited number of planets float in the sky, just like atoms, and great Vedantists who are engaged in research to find you discover that everything is different from you. At last, they conclude that you are everything.
When Lord Krishna was within this universe, Brahma played a trick on him in order to confirm that the special cowherd boy in Vrindavan was actually Krishna himself. By his mystic power, Brahma stole all the cows and calves and cowherd friends of Krishna and hid them. But when Brahma returned to see what Krishna was doing alone, he saw that Krishna was still playing with the same cows, calves, and cowherd boys. By his Vaikuntha potency, Lord Krishna had expended all the stolen cows and friends. Indeed, Brahma saw millions and billions of them, and he also saw millions and billions of herding sticks and fruits, lotus flowers, and horns. All the cowherd boys were wearing different clothes and ornaments, and no one could count their vast numbers. Then Brahma saw each of the cowherd boys became a four-handed Narayan, and he also saw innumerable Brahmas from different universes offering obeisances to the Lord. He saw that all these personalities were emanating from the body of Krishna, and after a second entering into his body, Lord Brahma became struck with wonder by this extraordinary feat of Krishna's. And in a prayer, he stated that although anyone and everyone could say they knew all about Krishna, as far as he was concerned, he did not know anything about him. My dear Lord, he said, the potencies and opulences you have exhibited just now are beyond the ability of my mind to understand. Lord Chaitanya further explained that not only is the potency of Krishna Lord limitless, but also is that of Vrindavan, Lord Krishna's abode on this planet, from one point of view. Vrindavan is about 32 square miles in area, yet is one part of the of this Vrindavan all the Vaikunthas exist. The area of present-day Vrindavan contains 12 forests and covers about 84 kroshas or 168 miles in area. And Vrindavan city is estimated to be about 16 kroshas or 32 square miles. How all the Vaikunthas can exist there is beyond material calculation. Thus, Lord Chaitanya concluded that the potencies and opulences of Krishna are unlimited. When whatever he told Sanatana Goswami was only partial, but by such a partial presentation one can try to imagine the whole. When Lord Chaitanya was speaking to Sanatana Goswami about the opulences of Krishna, he became deeply immersed in ecstasy, and in that transcendental state he recited a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam in which Uddhava, after the disappearance of Krishna, told Vidur, Krishna is the master of all demigods, including Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the expansion of Lord Vishnu within this universe. Therefore, there is no one equal to or greater than him. He is full of six opulences, and all the demigods engaged in the administration of each universe offer their respectful obeisances unto him. Indeed, the helmets on their heads are beautiful because they are decorated with the imprints of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. It is similarly stated in the Brahma Samhita that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and no one can be equal to or greater than him. That is Brahma's conclusion. Although the universal rulers, Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, are masters of each and every universe, they too are servant of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,